What is up, guys? Randomonium here. So we're going to be going over the patch 8.23 notes. Normally I don't do these type of videos, but this is such a huge patch, and I feel like I actually have something worthwhile to contribute to this discussion, so I'd like to throw my 2 cents in. LS and Freak do really good patch notes reviews, so I would recommend those two people especially to watch in addition to my video. If you watch all three of us, then I think you'll cover most everything. I haven't seen too many other crazy things from other videos that I've watched. But I'm going to go quickly through some of these changes, and I really want to focus on the minions and the turret changes and the bounty changes and things like that, because those really shake up how the game is going to be played. So Aatrox, his duration on his ult is down, but he gains Bloodwell a little bit faster. I think this is a net nerf overall, especially to his late game. I think that they're probably doing this to see if maybe they can put more power into different abilities, since his ult has a lot of power in the late game. But yeah, net nerf overall, I would say, to Aatrox. Ezreal's getting a buff on his AP side of things. And it sounds like they may be trying to bring back AP Ezreal. I don't know. But the fact that they're upping the base damage on Essence Flux and they're increasing the ratio as well definitely gives you a decent case to go W second on Ezreal. And then his True Shot Barrage also seems like it's potentially worse against minions, but better against champions, so better for like sniping kills and things like that. Remember, the Essence Flux can also be used on towers, so this could make Ezreal a better sieging marksman if you use your W on towers. So that could potentially be very useful, especially with the turret plating changes we have that we'll talk about later. So Lissandra's got a new passive, and it basically means that she turns people into the Kog'Maw when she kills them, except that they damage their allies. So they turn these frozen thralls that chase enemies. And then they also changed quite a few of her abilities. They reduced the AP ratios. They reduced the base damages. So basically they're making Lissandra less of a burst mage. So she has less bursts associated with her, and she has a little bit more utility and more DPS. So she's more of a battle mage type. So I'll probably move her into battle mages or potentially into specialists, since she does have some mobility with her glacial path. I think overall, this kind of fits Lissandra's theme more. So it probably is good changes. I'm not sure if the numbers are right, though, if they need to be, either increased or decreased. I'm not exactly sure if this is going to wind up being a net buff or nerf to Lissandra. So Talia, lots of changes to Talia. Basically, what I'm taking away from this is that this is a buff to mid lane Talia, and it's a nerf to jungle Talia, because reducing the work ground duration to 45 seconds doesn't help her as much because of the jungle timers. The 120 seconds was kind of perfect for like jungle camps and things like that. So she can't really take advantage of the reduced worked ground duration with the in the jungle, but it does help her push lanes easier. And the fact that she takes the minions take less damage, and also monsters take less damage now with her Q, means that jungle Talia definitely takes a nerf, and that mid Talia potentially has a buff. It's kind of hard to tell for sure. Yorick, they did a bug fix, but basically means that Yorick will draw turret aggro if he deals damage to any champion with his Mistwalkers and the Maidens. I don't really like this. I thought this was an intended thing where they draws the aggro on the Maiden and the Mistwalkers rather than on Yorick. I think this is overall a nerf to him. So yeah, that's kind of interesting that they fixed that. I'm wondering if they're going to give him a compensation buff instead. Doran's shield, so now it's scaling health regen up to 30 at 25% missing health. So if you're at 75% health or lower, you get the 30 health over 10 seconds. So it looks like if you're like, 80 to like 82% health, that's like the break-even point for Doran's shield. So basically it makes Doran's shield better in really bad matchups, and it makes Doran's shields worse when you're in even or positive matchups. So it basically makes Doran's shield a more niche item. against difficult lane matchups. It makes it stronger against those matchups. So it helps people survive against lane bullies a little bit better. Ginsu's, lots of changes here. I'm not exactly sure what exactly the net is going to be as a result of it. They dropped the cost by 200 gold. They removed the scaling on the on-hit damage, but now they're giving it total armor and magic penetration based off of level. And it looks like they are no longer adding bonus attack damage and ability power per stack, but it still has the Ginsu's Rage passive, I believe, which is instead of it proccing, it procs the on-hit abilities more frequently. So, I don't know. This is kind of weird. I think they're trying to make it less of more like of a generalist item. I kind of have to play with this before I actually make a decision on how good or bad this is. For jungle, they moved the nerf to the gold funneling strat. If you have the most minions and you no longer have reduced gold, we'll see how that affects the gold funneling strat. Relic Shield, they basically made it so that it executes better since they're changing how the minion health scales. So they're trying to make Targon still effective in the late game against the minions that have higher health. So that's a good change. Control word inventory cap reduced to 2. This has massive implications in pro play. The trinket scaling goes off of, instead of the level of the owner, the average level of champs. So this is a buff to supports. It means that supports can use their trinkets more often, but it means that solo laners can use it less often. And then the warding duration, 90 to 180 down to 90 to 120. So it means you still have the same amount of warding ability in the early game, but late game your ability to ward will be severely nerfed. So it means that you can't clear wards effectively, and you also don't have your wards last as long. So this is going to basically put a greater importance on really conserving your wards for the proper times and the proper locations. But if you choose the right time to ward, it will be harder to clear your wards because there'll be less control wards available on the map. So this actually has huge implications to professional play. I don't think it's going to affect solo play that much. But yeah, so let's get into the big stuff, which is the turrets, the minions, things like that. All right, so turret plating. So basically the way this works is that for outer towers, they have 5 plates. So the tower has 5,000 health. Each plate is 1,000 health. And then if you destroy a plate, so if you deal 1,000 damage, then you gain 160 local gold. And then you increase the armor and magic resist on the tower by 30. Additionally, what happens is that after a plate is destroyed, if you have multiple enemy champions near the tower, the tower gains additional armor and magic resistance as long as those champions are nearby. So what this encourages is that it basically means that it's a lot harder for you to like burst down a tower with a 4-man dive or a 5-man dive. The plating falls off at 14 minutes, and it basically means that the outer towers will lose all armor and magic resist, but it makes it so that you can't claim that 160 gold from breaking a plate. So all right, so what's the net impact to all of this? What it means is that lane bullies can get more gold. First off, it means that, if you're able to push your lane and you're able to get damage on the towers, you can get 160 gold for every 1,000 damage you do to the tower. So that's 800 gold for each outer tower. So potentially you could get 2,400 gold across the 3 towers if you destroy all 5 plates on all 3 outer towers by 14 minutes. So obviously that's not going to work all the time, but it's definitely something to consider. It also means that it's a lot harder for those outer towers to fall before 14 minutes. So it means that if you're a scaling champion, you have more time to hide under your tower. You can extend the laning phase a little bit longer. So that's good for scaling champions. So it's kind of, you're buffing both lane bullies because they get more gold in the early game, and you're also buffing scaling champions because they have the ability to farm for a longer period of time within laning phase. And then the final thing is that the fact that the bulwark, where if after you destroy a plate, the tower gains additional resistances if you have multiple people in the area, that actually makes roams and TP plays and 4- and 5-man dives less advantageous because while you're trying to force down a tower. Once that tower gains the bulwark and it gains a bunch of additional resistances, the other lanes can have a potential to push. So while you might get one tower plating, the enemy team could get 2 tower platings. And like if you're trying to dive bot lane, they could break platings in mid and top, while you're bot lane trying to wail on a tower that's got several hundred armor and magic resist. So what does this mean? It means that I actually think that it means that this game is less snowball-y. It means that 4 and 5 man tower dives are going to be less advantageous, which I think is a good thing. It means that junglers need to not only play around their lanes, but they also need to play around the plating. So it's going to be very useful for when a jungler ganks, he's going to want to try and get that some damage on the tower to knock off that plating. So I think that jungle is going to become much more strategic. You're going to have to pay a lot more attention to how close are you to breaking one of those platings. So not only can you defend your allies' towers and prevent those platings from being destroyed, but you also can attack the lanes where your allies are about to destroy platings, so you can gain some additional gold. This is a lot of extra gold that you can gain from these tower platings. It's, that's 800 gold per tower. So that's multiple kills worth of gold that you can gain if you're in the right place in the right time as a jungler. Same thing if you're trying to roam as a mid laner or support or things like that. But you can't stay there for a long period of time, because otherwise you're going to get counter push. They're going to take platings of their own. So it definitely means that you have to be much more efficient with your time overall. The other big thing that this does is it makes Rift Herald incredibly strong if you take it before the 14-minute mark. It makes Rift Herald unbelievably strong, because if you get Rift Herald and you're able to summon it on a tower that's full health, you can basically gain 1,000 gold if you're able to knock down that tower. So you can imagine that if you summon Rift Herald and then you give all of that local gold to an AD carry or a scaling mid laner, you suddenly just gave your AD carry or your mid laner an extra 1,000 gold in their pocket around the 10-minute mark. That's a massive power spike that you can give them just for taking Rift Herald. So I think Rift Herald is going to be extremely important, especially if you can get it before the 14-minute mark. I think you're going to see teams doing lane swaps more often. Around the 10-minute mark, that's when Rift Herald spawns. So I think that it's going to be advantageous, especially in coordinated play, to do a lane swap around the 10-minute mark, trying to get vision around Rift Herald, trying to secure Rift Herald, and then using Rift Herald to gain some of those tower platings before the 14-minute mark. All right. So for the turret adjustments, the way it works is that once the tower plating falls off, outer towers are going to be extremely easy to kill. So that is advantageous for teams that are already winning, but it also can be advantageous for teams that are losing, because all you got to do is get one good strong push in the side lanes. If the enemy team is grouping on mid, trying to siege mid, you can push the side lane and you can get some basically you can trade some objectives pretty easily with those outer towers, since they won't have any resistances, while the inner towers and the inhibitor towers will have resistances. All of the towers are going to scale harder with AD scaling. That means that it's going to be harder to dive. The towers are going to deal more damage to enemy champions. So that's going to make it harder for tower diving. It's going to make it so that towers tickle less and they're actually going to hurt more, especially if you don't have a lot of resistances yourself. They're also dropping the gold that you gain for inner towers and inhibitor towers, which means that the game will wind up being less snowball-y. So while the winning team will gain more gold by collecting the plating on those outer towers, they will gain less gold for inner towers and inhibitor towers, which means that the losing team will have a greater chance of potentially mounting a comeback, especially with the shutdown gold mechanics. All right. So let's get into the minions, because this is another huge aspect of it. Minions and towers are just the fundamental things in this game that, and the fact that we're changing both of them is just really, really huge. So basically what's happening is that minions are going to do less damage to turrets, less damage to champions, but they're going to gain movement speed bonuses, so they're going to move a lot faster. their max health scaling and their max AD scaling for both caster minions, melee minions are going to get a lot stronger. It's like, it winds up being like 600. They're going to do 600% more damage than they used to do, if I remember correctly when I did the math. So what this means is while they are doing less damage to turrets and champions, they're actually going to wind up doing more damage to turrets and champions because their scaling is a lot higher. So what this is going to result in is that minion waves are going to die faster. So if you have a pushing lane, the lane's going to push a lot harder. It's going to push a lot faster because the minions also have movement speed bonuses. And then when they get to the tower, they're going to deal a lot more damage to the tower. The towers still deal the same damage to minions because they deal % max health damage to minions. So it's going to be a lot harder for the minion waves to die. So basically it's going to result in that if you have a massive wave stacked up, it's going to be easier to get that tower. So stacking minion waves, especially in the side lanes, is going to become much more important. And you're going to have to play around that much more because the minions are going to really hurt those inner towers and those inhibitor towers if you don't get in front of them and clear them. So basically the game is going to punish you a lot more for mispositioning and not paying attention to the side lanes, not doing those macro plays. The other big thing is that the cannon minions are going to spawn earlier. So they're going to spawn every 2 waves at 15 minutes. And they're going to spawn every wave at 25 minutes. And then the cannon minions take less damage to the more inner turrets. So they take 11 damage against inner turrets, 11% health damage against inner turrets, 8% max health damage against inhibitor and nexus turrets. So that means it's going to be harder for towers to clear cannon minions, which is going to help the winning team siege better. So yeah, overall, it's going to mean that it's a lot harder to clear minions. It's going to be a lot harder to turtle. It's going to be a lot harder to... games are not going to stall out as easily, which I think is going to wind up being a good thing. So basically what we're seeing right now is that the changes is that laning phase will last for longer, which will give those scaling champions more time to scale in laning phase. But once 14 minutes hits, it's going to be an absolute bloodbath because towers are going to start dropping like flies. It's going to be a lot easier to push lanes. So if you haven't kind of stabilized at the 14-minute mark, if you haven't at least kept it close in the gold department by the 14-minute mark, the game is over. The game is going to end very, very quickly. But as long as the game is close, you do have a really good chance of being able to come back because it's going to be a lot easier to take those outer towers if you're the losing team. And then it's also going to be a lot easier to gain that advantage back from shutdown gold and things like that, which we'll get there. So what this means is it's a lot harder to stall at the game with wave clear. So champions like the Sivers and Victor, those type of Nivea, those champions that have the insane wave clear, it's going to be harder to stall out and just clear those waves instantaneously if you're on the losing side of the game right now. So games will end a lot quicker if one team is already snowballed. Epic monsters, elemental drakes are spawning 1 minute faster. Elder drake is spawning 2 minutes faster. And Baron Ash is spawning 1 minute faster. I like this that they're both at 6 minutes. It means that you have to choose a lot of times. So there's going to be a lot of trade-offs. Hey, do we go for Elder? Do we go for Baron? Things like that. The fact that the elemental drake is not going to be spawning till 5 minutes and the respawn time is going to be 5 minutes means that you can't cheese drake anymore. But I do think that that's good. It's going to make the games more stable. And the other fact that they're actually making it so the drakes have more kill gold and more XP means that it's more advantageous to go for early drakes, because there was always the concern that if you go for an early drake, you're going to fall behind in EXP, you're going to fall behind in kill gold, things like that. So the fact that they've bumped up the kill gold and they've bumped up the EXP makes it more advantageous to take early drakes. Another big thing that happens with the early drakes is now they're making that the first drake that you gain is a lot more powerful. So instead of gaining 8% of your AD and your AP with the first Infernal Drake, you now gain 10%. Instead of gaining 10% damage to structure with your first Mountain Drake, you now gain 16%. For the Ocean Drake, instead of gaining 4% health and mana regen, you gain 6%. And for Cloud Drake, it means that instead of gaining 2% for your first Drake, you now get 3%. The rank 3 Drakes are still the same. So what that means is that if you can take a single Drake off of a winning team, so for example, if the enemy team has 2 Infernal Drakes, and they're trying to go for that third. Well, if they go for that third, they'll increase, if they get the third, they'll wind up increasing their AP and their AD by 7. But if you get it, then you wind up increasing your AP and your AD by 10. So it's more advantageous to go for those steals, to contest those objectives, because you have more to gain. They have less to gain, you have more to gain if you're behind, basically. So those first Drakes are really important. I think the Ocean Drake, that first Ocean Drake, if the first Ocean Drake spawns, that's really big. 6% of your missing health is pretty huge. And then also with the fact that the minions are moving a lot faster, Cloud Drakes are going to have higher importance, because it's going to be a lot harder to keep up with those minion waves and rotate between the lanes. So Cloud Drakes are going to actually be more important because of the minion movement speed changes. And then obviously with towers, Mountain Drakes are going to be a little bit better as well. Especially if you get an early Mountain Drake, you'll be able to use that to knock down the tower plating a lot easier. So like in an ideal scenario, you want to say, hey, if I got a Mountain Drake first, I take that at 5 minutes. I try to knock down as many plates as I can. I swap my bot lane to top lane at 10 minutes. I try to knock down as many plates as I can. I take the Rift Herald as soon as possible. I use that to knock down more plates. And then you wind up gaining, several thousand gold just by knocking down a lot of plates and gaining an early Mountain Drake and an early Rift Herald. That obviously is like the ideal scenario, but you can see what happens, how easy it is to snowball out of control if you can start having a really good early game and knock down a lot of those platings. Oh, sorry. Jungle camp experience. So early game, it's unchanged. Late game, it's less. So basically what this is going to mean is that junglers are going to have a harder time keeping up with solo laners in the late game. But early game, they should still be fine. I don't know how I feel about this. I think this is kind of like junglers are already really early game focused, and they kind of are like not as useful in the late game. And the fact that you're dropping the experience on the jungle camps in the late is going to probably make it even harder. So late game, your jungler may turn into like a second support unless they're like really fed. All right, so now we have the adaptive. Those are the big things on the minions and the towers. Let's get into the runes and stuff like that. So for runes, you can now choose what you want. I know a lot of people are pissed off because there's only one row that gives you attack speed, so you can't go for that 18% attack speed anymore for like champions like Shyvana or Olaf or something like that, or certain marksmen. But overall, I think this is pretty good. I think that this, like 1% cooldown reduction early is like nothing, so you basically get nothing early, but 10% later on at level 18 is pretty sizable. I wish that the scaling was a little bit different, like maybe it was like 5 to 10% instead of 1 to 10%, something like that. And then it'd be nice if they added attack speed to row 2 or something like that. That might be something that they wind up adding later on. Overall, I think this is good because it means that you can kind of play your way. So if you are going up into a difficult lane matchup, you can be like, screw this. I'm going to get, if I'm going up against a Zed, I'm going 5 armor for row 2 and 5 armor for row 3 or something like that. And just kind of, go super defensive, things like that. Fleet footwork, AP ratio decrease. It's going to affect mainly Kassadin and potentially Victor. The Victor is normally going Klepto. So, yeah, it's going to make it a lot less decent on AP users, but it'll still probably be used a lot on marksmen, things like that. Celerity is dead because it's based off of movement speed bonuses rather than base movement speed. So it winds up being nothing, basically. They need to change this to potentially be like base movement speed or something like that. But the fact that it's based on movement speed bonuses is it's not going to be very useful. Dark Harvest, I've heard it's really broken. I haven't really had a chance to experiment with it on the PBE. Yeah, I want to have more fun with it before I make a final decision on how broken it is. Ravenous Hunter, they reduced the base healing, but the bonus per stack is still 2.5%. I don't know if this was necessarily needed, but it's kind of whatever. Demolish. I was hoping they weren't going to touch Demolish because I was going to run that shit like every single game. Especially with the turret plating, Demolish would have just been so OP. But the fact that they reduced it from 175 to 100, that really hurts its early game efficiency. They still have the 30% max health scaling. I'm going to still try and run Demolish and see if I can make it work. But they definitely kind of caught on and said, hey, this is probably going to be way too powerful with the turret plating. So yeah, this is probably a good nerf overall. I still am sad that they nerfed it because I feel like Demolish gets overlooked a lot as a rune. Shield Bash. This actually looks really cool. I actually want to try this out. You can use it on Victor, Diana, a lot of different divers. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm going to use this on a lot of champions like Jarvan, Vi, those kind of champions. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to having some fun with Shield Bash. Bone Plating, this is actually, I think, probably a good change. They reduced the buff duration, but they increased the block amount. So basically, that makes this more of an anti-burst tool, but you basically have no control. Like, if they proc it, they proc it. So this is probably going to make it so that it's going to be more required. If somebody's got bone plating, you're going to need to pop the bone plating, wait, and then all in them rather than just all in them while the bone plating is up. Chrysalis was removed. Overgrowth, I love this change. 3 health per 8 nearby or minion or monster deaths. This can really help some champions who want to go for some extra health. But it still means that it has the max percent health scaling, which is really good for tanks. So they made it more advantageous for people who aren't tanky to take it, but they also still made it so that tanks will still probably want to take it. Klepto, so now it's going to be, after using an ability, your next 2 basic attacks will grant 5 gold or something nicer. So, like, Urgot could use this, Lucian. It's going to be interesting to see which champions this is going to actually be really useful on, since you have to tie it towards auto attacks. Yeah, I'm curious. I want to experiment with this with a bunch of other champions before I draw any final conclusions on how good the new Kleptomancy is. All right, so bounties. Bounty gold is increased, so now it basically is like, so it goes 0, 150, 300 for bounties through 1 through 3, and then it increases by 100 after that. And I think this is good because they also capped the bounties. Yeah, so a single kill can no longer grant more than 1,000 total gold. They also made it so that if you like kill a bunch of people mid-combat and then you die, they don't get this massive bounty. It gets transferred over until later on. Those are really good changes. And the bounties are visible in scoreboard. That's another good change. And then they're also giving bounties based off of farming. So this is a nerf to Singed. It's a nerf to the Inting Scion build. It's a nerf potentially to bit like Tryndamere and some other split pushes. It's basically going to mean that you have to be, if you're going to split push and you're going to go for that kind of just like ignore champions and just go for towers and minions and maximize gold strategy, you're going to have to be smarter. So I think this is actually going to be a good change in the long run. I think you're going to get a lot of whining from people who don't know how to split push properly. But I think in the long run, this will actually train people how to split push better, especially with the way that the minion changes are. I was worried that split pushing was going to be actually overpowered. But this will kind of basically mean that split pushing is overpowered, but if the person is a monkey, then it's going to be a lot easier to shut them down, and you're going to get a lot more gold to actually shut them down. So I feel like it's going to make split pushing higher risk, but also higher reward, which is actually really good because it makes it more skill expressive, in my opinion. Minimum kill gold is now 100. This also kind of hurts the inting strategies of Singed or Scion, things like that. I still think that those strategies will still be pretty good since it's unchanged for 0 to 5 deaths. It's only when you get like 6, 7, 8, 9 deaths in a row that it kind of actually is impacted. So I still think that you can still run those kind of strategies where you just try to create as much map pressure as possible. Just be aware that you're gonna give more gold to the enemy if you do that. Teleport. I feel like this is a net nerf to teleport. I wish that they would have reduced the channel back to 3.5 seconds. I think that was what the original channel was. They upped it to 4.5 seconds. Since they're canceling the teleport, you can't cancel teleport anymore. This is because you usually would, like a lot of times at the pro level, they would use teleport to zone people basically and force them to try and back off, and then they would cancel the teleport. So I like that they actually changed that because it makes it so that you can't bait teleports anymore. I think they probably need to reduce this channel duration to like at least 3.5 seconds, or Ignite is going to outshine it, especially in solo queue play. In-game stats panel. I have to see what this looks like. I don't know what this looks like yet, so I have no comment on this. Ranked armor. I have seen this and it looks really cool. I'm excited for the ranked armor and the new splits and all the ranked 2019 changes. I still have some questions about how Splash XP or Splash LP is going to work if you're playing multiple roles, but I guess I'll figure out how that's going to work once the new season rolls out. Game lobbies are going to have banners and ranks on them. That's good. And missions are going to be, looks like it's a bug fix on missions. A couple more other bug fixes. They fixed the stuff on LeBlanc. I know a lot of people were complaining about that. It looks like they changed some, or they fixed Rengar a little bit. So, yep. Skins. These Leona skins look really cool. I'm still salty that they didn't have Diana skins associated with this either. Hopefully they will fix that. Maybe, next year sometime we'll get a Solar Eclipse Diana and a Lunar Eclipse Diana. Coven Camille and Coven Lissandra look really cool. Don't really get the pajama skins, but whatever. Yeah, I'm sure some people will find it really cute. And then we've got the chromas. So overall, this is huge. Like, these are really massive, massive, massive changes. And it's going to greatly change both solo queue and professional play. It's making macro play so much more important. But it's also allowing you to solo carry better. So I feel like overall, these are all really net positive changes, because you have the people who want to be there for the skill expression, and they want to be there because they want to just dominate somebody 1v1 and solo carry the game. You have more ability to do that now. On the other hand, there's some people like me. I'm on the side of, hey, I'm more interested in the macro play. I'm more interested in map rotations and being in the right place at the right time, and taking objectives with very little risk, out rotating opponents, kind of always keeping them on the back foot, that type of stuff. That's what really I enjoy about League of Legends, and that is also being rewarded as well. So overall, I have very positive feelings about this patch. I'm very excited to see what they do with the first couple patches of the season, 9.1 and 9.2. But just keep in mind, the tower platings are huge with this patch. You gotta pay attention to tower platings. You want to try and maximize how many platings you can get before 14 minutes. Early Rift Heralds are huge. You should be getting wards on Rift Herald. You should be trying to secure Rift Herald before 14 minutes if you can, and using it on a tower to knock down those platings. Minions deal a lot more damage. They also have higher health scaling. They're going to push a lot faster. They're going to do a lot more damage to towers. Towers are not going to kill them any faster because they do percent max health damage. Towers are also going to deal more damage to champions, so that's going to make tower diving harder. So you can see how laning phases can be extended. It's going to be more forgiving for scaling champions in the laning phase, but it gives the potential for Blade Bullies to get a lot more gold through the plating. If you gain enough gold and you really kind of snowball the game out of control, games are going to end very, very quickly. But if you're playing a scaling champion or a scaling composition and you're able to keep the gold close, you have more ability to recover and basically come back in the game. So I think that's going to make games a lot more interesting. I'm expecting that at first, games are going to be very snowbally and stomps. They're just going to be like really, really fast. But as people get used to the changes and they understand how the changes affect their games, game timers are going to go back to being 35 minutes. And you're going to wind up having better games overall. So games where one team is getting stomped will end quicker, but games that are close are probably going to go longer. And those are the games that I really love. Those long games that are back and forth, they're high stakes, high risk, high reward. Those are the real memorable games in League of Legends. And it seems like a lot of these changes are going to allow you to get through the stomp games quicker and kind of maximize the amount of time you get to have playing those really fun games that are back and forth. So anyway, that's my take on the patch so far. You can let me know how I'm wrong in the comments below or whether or not you agree with me. As always, I always have encouraged constructive criticism. I'm always happy to answer any questions you guys have. I love you guys for all the support you've been giving me lately. And I'll be trying to put out as many videos as I can, as rapid fire as I can. But obviously I also want to spend a little bit of time on the big videos that I'm working on, which is like how to find your main champion. I need to do that for Season 9. I want to do more beginner's guides to League of Legends, talking about like how to develop win conditions and really how to maximize your impact in a game. I want to talk about like different items and what are the strengths and weaknesses of items or different rune builds or different summoner spells, all that kind of stuff. So I'm always open to ideas. I'm always open to suggestions. And I always try to at least read every comment that is on my channel, and I try to respond to as many as I can. But yeah, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. This is Randomonium signing off.